The metal corridors of the alien ship echoed with the sound of heavy boots. Captain Jake Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead as he led his team deeper into the massive vessel. 3 years of war had brought them to this moment. Earth's colonies were gone. Millions of people had lost their homes. This ship, floating in the darkness of space, was their last chance to end the nightmare. "Stay close," Jake whispered to his team. The walls around them glowed with a strange blue light, like looking at the ocean from underwater. Everything felt alive in this place. The floor beneath their feet pulsed gently, as if they were walking inside some giant creature's heart. Behind him, 5 soldiers followed. They had started with 50. The journey through the ship had cost them dearly. Each room they cleared, each quarter they fought through, took another friend away from them. Now only 6 remained to face whatever waited at the center of this floating city. The aliens they fought were unlike anything humans had ever imagined. Tall beings with skin that looked like living crystal. They moved with grace and seemed to know what the humans would do before they did it. Their weapons shot beams of pure energy that could cut through steel like paper. But the strangest thing was how they fought together, like they all shared one mind. "Captain," whispered Torres, the youngest member of their team, "my scanner shows massive energy readings ahead. Whatever's in there, it's big." Jake nodded. He had been a soldier for 15 years, fought in wars on 3 different planets. But nothing had prepared him for this. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on his shoulders like a mountain. If they failed here, Earth would fall within months. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that took Jake's breath away. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into shadows. Pillars of living light rose from the floor, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. And at the center, on a throne made of what looked like frozen starlight, sat the alien queen. She was magnificent and terrible at the same time, twice as tall as any human. Her crystal skin caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. Her arms moved gracefully as she turned to face them, and her eyes were the deep purple of twilight. Skies around her lay the bodies of her guards, fallen in their final duty to protect their ruler. But something was wrong. The queen was hurt badly. Golden liquid that must have been her blood pooled beneath the throne. One of her arms hung at an odd angle, and her breathing came in short, painful gasps. She was dying. Jake raised his weapon, knowing this was the moment everything had led to. One shot would end the war. Earth would be safe. The colonies could be rebuilt. Children could grow up without fear of the crystal warriors from the stars. Yet something made him hesitate. Maybe it was the way she looked at him, not with hatred or fear, but with a sadness so deep it seemed to fill the entire chamber. Her lips moved, speaking in the musical language of her people. But somehow Jake understood the meaning without knowing the words. "You have won," she seemed to say. "My people will fight no more." Then something impossible happened. Images flashed through Jake's mind. But they weren't his memories. He saw a beautiful world covered in cities of living crystal, where beings of light and music created art that touched the soul. He saw children playing in gardens where flowers sang lullabies. He saw peaceful people who had never known war until humans came to their space. The visions hit him like physical blows. He saw the truth about how this war had started. It wasn't the aliens who attacked first. A group of human military leaders had destroyed one of their peaceful ships and made it look like an unprovoked assault. The crystal beings had only fought back to defend themselves, but the strongest feeling that came through wasn't anger or hatred. It was love. This dying queen loved her people with a passion that burned brighter than any star. She had fought not from cruelty, but from the desperate need to protect those who looked to her for safety. Jake lowered his weapon. His team stared at him in shock, but he couldn't explain what he was feeling. Walking slowly across the chamber, he knelt beside the fallen queen. She watched him with those deep purple eyes, confusion replacing the sadness. From his belt, Jake pulled out his water container. The queen's breathing was getting weaker. Whatever was happening to her, she didn't have long. Without really knowing why, he offered her water, holding the container to her lips. The queen's surprise was so strong Jake could feel it like electricity in the air. Here was her enemy, the one who had come to end her life, showing kindness in her final moments. She drank gratefully, and some of the pain seemed to leave her face. With one of her remaining good arms, she reached toward Jake. In her palm was a small crystal, no bigger than a marble, but it glowed with warm golden light. She pressed it into his hand, and when their skin touched, Jake felt something change inside him forever. "Remember us," her voice whispered in his mind. "Remember who we really were." The light in her eyes grew dim, and the great queen of the crystal people breathed her last breath. With her death, Jake felt something else happen across the ship. The other aliens stopped fighting. Their connection to their queen had been cut, and without her guidance, they simply gave up. The war was over. Humanity had won. But as Jake looked down at the small crystal in his palm, still warm with the queen's final gift, he wondered if victory was supposed to feel this empty. His team gathered around him, celebrating their success, but Jake barely heard them. The crystal pulsed gently against his skin, and he could swear he felt the queen's presence still lingering within it. Something told him this was not an ending, but a beginning. He slipped the crystal into his pocket, knowing instinctively that this secret would change everything. The queen had given him more than just a dying gift. She had given him the truth and the responsibility to decide what to do with it. As they made their way back through the now silent ship, Jake's mind raced with questions. What would happen when Earth learned the real story of how the war began? Could humanity handle the truth about what they had done? And what was this crystal that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his own heartbeat? The journey home would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks to decide whether to be the hero who ended the war, or the truth-teller who might tear apart everything humanity believed about their greatest victory. The crystal grew warm in his pocket, and Jake Rodriguez walked toward a future that would be far more complicated than anyone could imagine. 6 months had passed since Jake Rodriguez returned to Earth as humanity's greatest hero. The parades were over, the medals hung on his wall, and the reporters had moved on to other stories. But the nightmares remained. Every night, Jake saw the same images: the dying queen's purple eyes, the golden blood pooling beneath her throne, the faces of his fallen teammates who would never see home again. He would wake up in cold sweats, his heart pounding like a drum in the darkness of his small apartment. The military had given him a comfortable pension and a nice place to live in the capital city. Politicians wanted to shake his hand. Children asked for his autograph. Everyone called him the man who saved humanity. But Jake felt like a fraud. The crystal the queen had given him sat on his bedside table, glowing softly in the dark. During the day, he kept it hidden in his pocket, but at night, he would hold it and feel its warmth against his palm. Sometimes, he swore he could hear whispers coming from inside it, speaking in that musical alien language he somehow understood. Jake had tried to live a normal life. He went to therapy sessions where he told the doctor about his bad dreams, but he never mentioned the crystal or the truth about the war. He tried dating, but every relationship ended the same way. How could he explain to someone that everything they believed about humanity's greatest victory was a lie? The drinking started small: a beer with dinner, a glass of whiskey before bed, to help him sleep. But as the months passed, it took more and more to quiet the voices in his head. The queen's final words echoed in his mind every day: "Remember us. Remember who we really were." One particularly bad night, Jake sat in his kitchen with a bottle of pills in one hand and the crystal in the other. The weight of the secret felt like it was crushing him. Maybe it would be easier to just end it all. Let someone else deal with the truth. Let humanity live with their comfortable lie. As these dark thoughts filled his mind, something incredible happened. The crystal began to glow brighter than ever before, warm against his skin like a small sun. The kitchen around him faded away, and suddenly Jake was somewhere else entirely. He stood in a vast city made of living crystal, where buildings grew like trees and light flowed like water. Through every surface, the air was filled with music that seemed to come from the structures themselves, creating melodies that made his heart ache with their beauty. This was the alien homeworld before the war, and it was the most magnificent thing Jake had ever seen. Beings of crystal and light moved through the streets, their forearms creating graceful patterns as they communicated through touch and song. Children played games that involved shaping light with their minds, their laughter ringing like bells through the crystal corridors. Gardens bloomed with flowers that sang lullabies, and fountains created rainbows that danced in the air. But then, the vision changed, and Jake saw the horror of what had really happened. A human military ship, sleek and black, approached a peaceful alien vessel. The crystal beings inside were reaching out in friendship, broadcasting messages of welcome in a dozen human languages. They had gifts to share, technologies that could heal the sick and feed the hungry. Jake watched in sick fascination as the human ship opened fire without warning. The alien vessel, built for exploration and not war, was torn apart in seconds. Families died in the vacuum of space, their final thoughts filled with confusion and betrayal. Why were these humans attacking them? What had they done wrong? The vision showed him the aftermath. Human military leaders celebrating their successful defensive action against alien aggression. News reports speaking of unprovoked attack that never happened. The crystal beings' desperate attempts to communicate, to explain that they came in peace. Falling on deaf ears as humanity prepared for a war based on lies. Jake saw the Queen, in her younger days, beautiful and full of hope, trying to find a peaceful solution even as human fleets destroyed her people's colonies. She had sent envoys, offered to surrender, begged for mercy. But the human military leaders wanted a war. It was profitable, and it unified Earth under their control. The worst part was seeing how the aliens fought. They could have wiped out humanity with their advanced technology, but the Queen ordered her people to use only defensive measures. They were trying to protect themselves while still hoping for peace. Every human life they took weighed heavily on their collective conscience. As the visions faded, Jake found himself back in his kitchen, tears streaming down his face. The crystal pulsed gently in his palm, and he felt the Queen's presence as clearly as if she were sitting next to him. She wasn't angry or vengeful. Even now, even after everything humanity had done to her people, she felt only sadness and hope. Why? Jake whispered to the empty room. Why did you save me? Why did you give me this? The answer came not in words, but in feelings that flowed through the crystal. The Queen had seen something in Jake during those final moments, something that gave her hope for the future. She had chosen him not to punish humanity for their crimes, but to help them become better than they were. The crystal contained more than just memories. It held the complete history of the crystal people, their art, their science, their philosophy. Of peace, it was a gift beyond price. A chance for humanity to learn from a truly advanced civilization. But it came with a terrible responsibility. Jake was the only human who knew the truth, the only one who had seen his people for what they really were, and the aliens for who they had always been. The question was, what was he going to do about it? He put down the bottle of pills and walked to his window, looking out at the lights of the sleeping city. Somewhere out there, politicians were making plans for humanity's expansion into space. Military leaders were designing new weapons to use against other alien species they might encounter. Children were learning in school about the day brave human soldiers defeated the evil crystal invaders. All of it built on a lie. All of it leading toward more wars, more death, more betrayal of the trust that other species might offer. The crystal grew warm in his hand, and Jake felt the Queen's final message flowing through him like electricity. She had died believing that one human, just one, might be brave enough to change everything. The question was Jake Rodriguez that human? He looked at his reflection in the window and saw not a hero, but a man carrying the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. The real war, he realized, was just beginning, and this time it would be fought not with weapons, but with truth. The crystal had shown Jake something incredible hidden in the Queen's final memories. Coordinates to a place humanity had never found, a secret that could change everything. 3 weeks later, Jake sat in his personal spacecraft, staring at the readings on his navigation screen. According to the Queen's memories, there was a hidden colony on the third moon of Kepler 442, a system so remote that no human had ever bothered to explore it. Jake had used his military connections and hero status to get permission for a personal journey of healing. The officials thought he was taking a vacation to deal with his war trauma. If only they knew the truth. As his ship approached the small, rocky moon, Jake's hands trembled on the controls. The crystal in his pocket grew warm, responding to something in the area. Through the view screen, the moon looked dead and empty. Just another piece of floating rock in the darkness of space. But the Queen's memories insisted otherwise. Following the coordinates exactly, Jake landed his ship in a crater that looked no different from 1,000 others. He put on his environmental suit and stepped out onto the surface, the crystal now glowing so brightly he could see its light through his pocket. Then he saw them. They emerged from hidden entrances in the crater walls like ghosts made of starlight. 12 crystal beings, the survivors of a war that had destroyed their entire civilization. They moved slowly, cautiously, their forearms held in positions Jake somehow knew meant they were afraid. The oldest among them was barely 5 feet tall, ancient by their standards, with crystal skin that had dulled to a soft gray. Behind him came others, some bearing the scars of old wounds, others so young their skin still shimmered with bright colors. At the back of the group stood a figure that made Jake's heart stop. She looked exactly like the Queen, but younger and filled with an anger that Jake could feel from 50 feet away. This had to be the Queen's daughter, and from the way she stared at him, she recognized him as the human who had ended her mother's life. The old one stepped forward and spoke in the musical language of his people. Jake didn't understand the words, but when he pulled the crystal from his pocket, something amazing happened. The meanings flowed into his mind as clearly as if the alien had spoken perfect English. "You carry our Queen's final gift," the elder said, his mental voice filled with wonder. "I am Thane, keeper of the sanctuary. How do you come to possess her sacred memory?" Jake held up the crystal. "It's like casting rainbow patterns on the rocky ground around them. She gave it to me when she was dying. I think she wanted me to find you." The young female who looked like the Queen stepped forward, her anger burning like a flame. "Lies," she said, her mental voice sharp as broken glass. "You are the butcher who ended our mother's life. You come here to finish what your kind started, Luna." "Wait," the elder said gently. "Can you not see? He carries the Queen's essence. She would not have given such a gift to one who meant us harm." But Luna was not convinced. Jake could feel her rage and pain like physical heat. She had lost everything: her mother, her people, her entire world, and now the killer stood before her claiming friendship. "I know what you must think of me," Jake said, speaking aloud since he didn't know how to project his thoughts. "I know what I took from you, but your mother showed me the truth before she died. I've seen what really happened, what my people did to yours." For the next hour, Jake told them everything. He spoke of the visions the crystal had shown him, the lies that started the war, the peaceful nature of their people that humanity had never bothered to understand. As he talked, he could feel the elder's mind touching his, reading his thoughts and emotions to judge his honesty. The other survivors listened in silence. Jake learned their names and stories. There was Kess, a young artist who had lost the ability to create light sculptures after seeing his family destroyed. Vera, an elderly female who had been a teacher and now cared for the 3 younglings who had survived. Zane, a warrior who had lost an arm defending the escaped ships but still blamed himself for not saving more. Their hidden colony was a miracle of desperation and hope. They had built their shelter in the moon's underground cave system, using their natural abilities to grow crystal formations that provided light, warmth, and even recycled their air. But they were slowly dying, without access to their homeworld's unique minerals. Their bodies were weakening. The younglings were growing up pale and sickly, their natural glow dim compared to what it should have been. "We have perhaps 2 years before the colony fails completely," Thane explained sadly. "Our technology requires resources we cannot find here. We chose this place because it was hidden, but in hiding, we have sealed our own fate." Jake felt a determination growing inside him that he hadn't experienced since the war. These people needed help, and he was in a position to provide it. Over the following weeks, he made regular trips to the colony, bringing medical supplies, rare minerals he purchased through military contacts, and technology that could help extend their lives. But Luna remained suspicious. She watched his every move, questioned his every gift, waited for the moment he would reveal his true intentions. Jake understood her distrust. If someone from her species had killed his mother, he would feel the same way. The breakthrough came when little Pip, the youngest of the survivors, fell seriously ill. The child's crystal skin had turned almost transparent, and the colony's medical knowledge was limited. Jake knew that human medical technology might be able to help, but bringing human doctors to the colony would expose its location. Instead, Jake made a desperate choice. He contacted his old military doctor, claiming he needed medical supplies for his own trauma recovery. Then he spent 3 days studying human and alien biology, trying to adapt human medicines for crystal physiology. It was dangerous and could have killed the child, but doing nothing would definitely mean death. As Jake worked to save Pip's life, Luna watched him closely. She saw him stay awake for 48 hours straight, monitoring the child's vital signs. She felt his genuine anguish when the treatment seemed to fail, his joy when they began to work. Most importantly, she sensed through the crystal's influence that his care was real. When Pip finally opened his eyes and smiled, his crystal skin beginning to glow with healthy light again, Luna approached Jake with tears in her large purple eyes. "You could have let him die," she said quietly. "It would have been easier for you. One less alien to worry about." Jake looked at her with exhaustion and sadness. "He's just a child. He never hurt anyone. None of you ever hurt anyone until we forced you to fight back." For the first time since he had arrived at the colony, Luna's anger seemed to fade. She studied his face, reading the guilt and determination there. "My mother chose well," she said. "Finally, you are not like the others of your kind." But even as Jake earned the trust of the survivors, a new problem was emerging. His frequent trips to the remote moon had been noticed by military tracking systems. Questions were being asked about the war hero's mysterious journeys. Soon, Jake would have to make the hardest choice of his life, expose the colony to save his own reputation, or risk everything to protect the last remnants of a people his own species had nearly destroyed. Crystal pulsed warmly in his pocket, and Jake felt the Queen's presence urging him forward. Whatever came next, he knew there was no turning back. The real test of his character was just beginning. Jake knew he was in trouble the moment he saw Commander Hayes waiting in his apartment. The tall, gray-haired woman sat in his kitchen chair like she owned the place, her cold blue eyes studying him as he walked through the door. Behind her stood two military security officers, their hands resting casually on their weapons. "Hello, Jake," Hayes said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We need to talk." Jake's heart raced, but he tried to keep his voice steady. "Commander, what brings you to my humble home?" "Sit down," she ordered, and Jake obeyed. The crystal in his pocket felt like it was burning against his leg. "You've been taking quite a few trips lately. 7 journeys to the Kepler system in 2 months. That's expensive fuel for a retired soldier. I needed time to think." Jake said carefully, "The war left me with a lot to process." Hayes pulled out a tablet and showed him tracking data from his ship. "Funny thing about thinking, Jake, most people do it without hauling medical supplies and rare minerals to empty moons." The trap was closing around him, and Jake knew it. Someone had been watching his supply purchases, tracking his movements, probably reading his communications. The military had grown suspicious of their greatest hero, and now they wanted answers. "You're going to take us there," Hayes continued, "tomorrow morning. Whatever you're hiding on that moon, it's time to bring it into the light." That night, Jake lay awake staring at the ceiling. The crystal pulsed beside him on the nightstand, and through its connection, he could feel the anxiety of the survivors on their hidden moon. Somehow, they knew danger was coming. Jake had 2 choices. He could lead the military to the colony, claim he had discovered them recently, and maybe negotiate some kind of protection for the survivors, or he could try to warn them, help them escape, and face whatever consequences came from defying his own species. But as dawn approached, Jake realized there was a third option. It was dangerous, maybe even suicidal, but it might be the only way to save both the survivors and give humanity a chance. To face the truth, the next morning, Jake's ship carried 5 passengers toward the hidden moon. Commander Hayes sat in the co-pilot seat, watching every move he made. Behind them, 3 security specialists checked their weapons and prepared scanning equipment to document whatever they found. "You know, Jake," Hayes said as they approached, "the moon. I've always wondered about your final report from the war. Very brief for such an important mission. Almost like you were leaving something out." Jake's hands tightened on the controls. "I reported everything that mattered. Did you?" Hayes pulled up another file on her tablet. "Funny thing. We found some interesting energy readings in the wreckage of the alien mothership. Readings that match the signature your ship has been carrying for the past 6 months." They knew about the crystal. Jake's mind raced as he realized how deep this investigation had gone. They had been watching him from the moment he returned from the war, waiting for him to lead them to whatever secret he was hiding. As they landed in the familiar crater, Jake felt the crystal growing warm in his pocket. Through its connection, he sensed the survivors hiding in their underground sanctuary. Afraid but ready to face whatever came, Luna was there, her mind burning with determination to protect her people. Thane waited calmly, accepting whatever fate would bring. "Well," Hayes demanded as they suited up for the moon's surface, "where are they?" Jake led the team to the hidden entrance, his heart heavy with the weight of betrayal. But as they approached the crystal formations that concealed the colony's doorway, he made his choice. Instead of opening the hidden panel, Jake pulled the Queen's crystal from his pocket. It blazed with golden light in the moon's dim atmosphere, casting rainbow patterns across the rocky ground. "Commander," Jake said quietly, "before you meet them, you need to understand what really happened during the war." Hayes stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the glowing crystal. "What is that thing?" "The truth," Jake replied, and activated the crystal's deepest memories. What happened next changed everything. The crystal's light expanded, surrounding all 5 humans in a sphere of golden radiance. Suddenly, they were experiencing the Queen's memories directly, seeing the war through alien eyes. Hayes gasped as she witnessed the unprovoked attack on the peaceful alien ship. The security officers stared in horror as they watched human forces destroying crystal cities full of innocent families. They felt the Queen's desperate attempts to communicate, her willingness to sacrifice herself for peace, her final hope that one human might choose compassion over conquest. But the most shocking revelation came when they saw the faces of the human leaders who had orchestrated the false flag attack. General Morrison, the current head of Earth's Space Forces, Admiral Cross, who was being considered for president, Defense Secretary Walsh, who had built his career on the heroic victory over the alien threat. "This is impossible," Hayes whispered. But Jake could see in her eyes that she knew it wasn't. Everything made too much sense. The aliens' defensive tactics, their attempts to communicate, their seemingly impossible knowledge of human movements had all fit if they had never wanted to fight in the first place. When the crystal's light finally faded, the 5 humans stood in stunned silence. 3 of the security officers looked sick, their faith in everything they had believed shattered in moments. But Hayes was different. Jake could see the intelligence in her eyes, the rapid calculations of someone trying to figure out how this changed everything. "The survivors," she said finally. "How many?" 12, Jake admitted. "They're dying slowly, without access to their homeworld's resources. I've been trying to help them, but there's only so much I can do alone." Hayes was quiet for a long moment, staring at the crystal in Jake's hand. "Do you know what this means? If this gets out, it will destroy the current government. There will be riots. Some people will never accept it. Some people," Jake said carefully, "might want to cover it up." As if summoned by his words, the hidden entrance to the colony opened. Thane emerged first, followed by Luna and the other survivors. They moved with dignity despite their fear, ready to face whatever judgment the humans would pass. Luna stepped forward, her purple eyes meeting Hayes' gaze directly. When she spoke, The crystal translated her words for all to hear. "We do not ask for your pity," she said proudly. "We ask only that you judge us by the truth, not by the lies your leaders told you." Hayes studied the survivors for a long moment. Jake could see her military mind working, weighing options, calculating consequences. Finally, she made a decision that surprised everyone. "Sergeant Torres," she ordered one of her men, "secure the perimeter. No one else comes to this moon without my authorization. Corporal Kim, start documenting everything, but this stays classified until I say otherwise." She turned to Jake, her expression unreadable. "You should have come to me sooner, Captain. This is bigger than just saving a few survivors. This is about the future of our entire species." The crystal pulsed gently in Jake's hand, and he felt something he hadn't experienced in months: hope. Maybe, just maybe, humanity was ready to face the truth about what they had done. And maybe, with Luna and the survivors as witnesses, they could find a way to become something better than they had been. But Jake knew the hardest part was still ahead. General Morrison and his allies would not give up their power without a fight. And when they learned that their greatest secret was about to be exposed, they would do anything to stop it, even if it meant eliminating the survivors and everyone who knew the truth. 3 months after Commander Hayes discovered the hidden colony, Jake found himself standing in the most important courtroom on Earth. The trial of General Morrison and his conspirators had captured the attention of the entire planet. Every news, CHA and NEL broadcast the proceedings live, and billions of people watched as the truth about the alien war was finally revealed. Jake held the Queen's crystal tightly as he testified. Its warm glow seemed to give him strength as he faced the cameras and told humanity what really happened on that distant mothership. Behind him sat Luna and Elder Thane, the first aliens most humans had ever seen in person. The crystal had done something incredible during the months leading up to the trial. When Jake activated it in the courtroom, it didn't just show the Queen's memories to a few people. The light somehow reached through every camera, every screen, every device connected to the global network. For one brief moment, every human on Earth experienced the war through alien eyes. The reaction was everything Hayes had predicted and worse. Riots broke out in major cities as people struggled to accept that their greatest victory had been built on lies. Some groups refused to believe the evidence, claiming the aliens had somehow faked the memories. Others demanded immediate justice, not just for the conspirators, but for everyone who had participated in the war. But something else happened that no one expected. Children around the world began reporting strange dreams after witnessing the crystal's revelation. Dreams where they could understand alien thoughts, where they felt connected to something larger than themselves. At first, doctors thought it was just trauma from seeing the disturbing war footage. Then the children began demonstrating abilities no human had ever possessed. 7-year-old Alex Chen in Tokyo could make small objects glow with inner light, just like the crystal formations in the alien colony. 9-year-old Rita Okafor in Lagos began drawing pictures of places she had never seen, places that looked exactly like the crystal cities from the Queen's memories. 10-year-old David White in New York started speaking in the musical language of the aliens, even though no human had ever learned to pronounce those sounds. Scientists studying these children made an astounding discovery. The crystal's influence was changing human DNA, but only in those young enough for their minds to adapt. The changes weren't random, they were following patterns that matched the alien genetic structure. Humanity was evolving, becoming something new. Jake experienced the changes too, but more slowly. His hair began to show streaks of silver that glowed faintly in darkness. His eyes developed flecks of purple that reminded everyone of the alien queen. Most remarkably, he could now communicate telepathically with Luna and the other survivors, understanding their thoughts as clearly as spoken words. The crystal was never just a memory keeper. Luna explained to Jake one evening as they watched the sunset from the observation deck of the new research station built on the hidden moon. "My mother designed it to be a bridge between our species. She saw that humans and our people could become something greater together. They neither could be alone." The station had become a symbol of hope for both species. Human scientists worked alongside alien survivors to understand the crystal's effects and help guide the evolutionary process. Children from Earth visited regularly, learning to control their new abilities while teaching the young aliens about human culture and ways of thinking. But the transformation wasn't limited to individuals. Entire human communities began changing as the crystal's influence spread. Cities started incorporating living light into their architecture, creating buildings that pulsed with gentle radiance. Artists began creating works that combined human creativity with alien harmony, producing music and sculptures that touched people's souls in ways nothing had before. The most amazing change came in how humans related to each other. The telepathic abilities developing in children made lying almost impossible. Bullying disappeared from schools as children could feel each other's pain directly. Wars between nations became unthinkable when leaders could sense the suffering their decisions would cause. Jake found himself at the center of this new world. No longer just a war hero, he had become humanity's first ambassador to their evolutionary future. He traveled between Earth and the growing network of joint colonies, helping humans and aliens learn to work together. The hardest part was dealing with those who resisted the changes. General Morrison's supporters formed underground groups that blamed the aliens for corrupting humanity. They saw the evolutionary changes as an invasion, a slow conquest that would destroy human nature forever. They're afraid, Jake explained to Luna during one of their many conversations. They see their children becoming something they don't understand, and fear makes people do terrible things. My mother felt the same fear, Luna replied, her mental voice filled with understanding. When your people first attacked us, many of my kind wanted to strike back with all our power. They were afraid that showing mercy would be seen as weakness. But Mother chose to hope instead of fear, and that choice led us here. The breakthrough came when Jake realized what the Queen had truly given him. The crystal wasn't just changing individuals, it was changing the fundamental nature of both species. Humans were gaining the aliens' capacity for empathy and harmony, while the surviving aliens were learning human creativity and adaptability. Children born after the crystal's activation were something entirely new. They looked human, but had the aliens' ability to communicate through thought and emotion. They possessed human imagination combined with alien wisdom. Most importantly, they seemed incapable of the hatred and fear that had driven their ancestors to war. 5 years after that first moment of mercy in the alien mothership, Jake stood in the Great Assembly Hall, a magnificent structure that had been grown rather than built using combined human and alien techniques. The walls pulsed with gentle light that responded to the emotions of everyone inside, creating patterns of beauty that shifted like living art. Before him sat representatives from both species, but the distinction was becoming less meaningful. Each day, human children with glowing eyes sat next to young aliens who had learned to laugh. Elderly humans whose hair shimmered with inner light worked with crystal beings, whose skin had taken on warmer, more human-like tones. Luna, now the recognized leader of all survivors, stood to address the assembly. She had changed over the years, her crystal skin developing patterns that reminded Jake of human tattoos, telling the story of her people's journey from tragedy to hope. My mother died believing that one act of kindness could change the course of 2 civilizations, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall through both sound and thought. Today, we see that she was right. The mercy shown by one human soldier in a moment of darkness has become the light that guides us all toward a better future. Jake looked out at the assembled crowd and marveled at what they had become. The children especially amazed him, beings who belonged fully to neither species, but somehow to both. They would inherit a universe where the old divisions no longer mattered, where the capacity for understanding and compassion had replaced the instinct for conquest and fear. The Queen's crystal, now permanently installed at the heart of the assembly hall, pulsed with warm golden light. Through it, Jake could still feel her presence, her satisfaction at seeing her final gamble pay off in ways she had never dared imagine. As the assembly concluded and people began to file out, chatting in mixtures of human languages and alien harmonies, Jake remained behind. He placed his hand on the crystal surface and felt the queen's consciousness stir within it. "Thank you," he whispered, knowing she could hear him across the boundary between life and death, "for believing that one person could make a difference, for trusting me with the future of both our peoples." The crystal's warmth against his palm felt like an embrace, and Jake knew that somewhere in the space between memory and hope, the alien queen was smiling. Her final act of mercy had indeed been shocking, not because of what she gave, but because of what it had allowed both species to become.